You know, social media companies were probably breathing a sigh of relief when the Democrats took over the House, thinking that since they themselves, these social media companies, are run by largely left-leaning individuals, good thing that Republicans were out of power in the House. Maybe not. The Republican National Lawyers Association board member, Harmeet Dhillon, joins us, as well as an RNC committeewoman. Harmeet, the irony is here that it's Democrats who've been leading the charge to police these privacy concerns and others far more aggressively than Republicans did. And this might be a very tough period for those companies. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a risk, Neil. Both sides have been talking about issues on social media. For example, the left, since the 2016 election, has claimed that the proliferation or alleged proliferation of Russian trolls on social media helped sway the election to Donald Trump, while since the election, Republicans have been complaining that censorship on social media platforms has disadvantaged them. And in our most recent election, we saw that Republican candidates had some of their ads taken down on conservative issues like pro-life. And so while both sides have been complaining about it, there really hasn't been the political will so far to do anything about it. And, you know, we have a very different system here in America with regard to free speech than they do in Europe or some of the more totalitarian areas of the world where social media censorship is the norm.
Yeah, you're quite right to bring up what got both, parties, hackling when it was something near and dear to them, when it was as either the targeted conservatives that got Republicans are upset, or those that squelched any sort of free expression that got Democrats upset. You can make the argument they each have an axe to grind now, so they would each be united in wanting to sort of take another look at these companies. But will they? What's your gut feeling?
Well, I think the question is what to do about it. I do think that there's a lot of pressure on both sides to do something about it. But
is that the government's role?
Conservative. Well, so as a conservative, I don't think that we should be imposing new regulations or have government censors or independent bodies that look at the level of censorship or even impose their own rules. I think that we have existing regulatory regimes that can be brought to bear. You know, we have Federal Trade Commission that could do a better job of enforcing truthfulness in these companies. We have potentially you could have some legislation that expands the role of the Federal Communications Commission. We have antitrust regulation that's already in place that could have, if brought to bear by the Department of Justice, a significant impact on the dominance of these companies with regard to digital advertising, which itself is actually strangling a lot of our traditional media companies in the United States. So I think if you use existing tools but use them smarter and use them in ways that are tailored to the new technology, that would be good. But when we saw these hearings over the past summer with these social media companies, it was clear that most of our legislators have absolutely zero clue how they work. They have interns who run it for them, and so they don't really understand it. And so we definitely need to look at those things more carefully before making some drastic moves. You know,
and bias is always, as you know, in the eye of the beholder. So if you try to institutionalize that or put it into some sort of an algorithm, it's a lot easier said than done. But having said that, there doesn't appear, and we'll maybe hear otherwise in the weeks and months to come, any outside influences to the degree that it turned races or the overall election outcome. But we're always looking for that ahead of the presidential election. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think you're correct. Maybe no outside influence, but the inside influence is significant. The social media companies are largely staffed by very liberal younger people, and they have proven that by the degree of their contributions to the Democrats.
Right.
These human censors are taking down largely conservative content. So certainly I've not heard that complaint from the left, but I've heard it in spades from conservatives. But that's one of the issues. Among the other issues, though, that I think is beyond politics is a lack of transparency on how our data is taken, how it is used, who it is sold to, who owns it, and who controls it. That's kind of a human rights issue, in my opinion, and that is something that's completely unregulated right now and really needs to be looked at. And the social media companies are trying to get ahead of this right now by imposing some self-regulation and promising that they'll be more transparent. I personally don't think that's going to happen unless we relieve them of some of their immunity from suit that they have under the Communications Decency Act and allow citizens and allow even the government in some cases to hold them liable where they lie, where they steal, and where they cause physical harm to people. I mean, you know, for example, we recently saw...
You're quite right, but I'm going to be cut off by a break here, and I apologize for that. But Harmeet, thank you very much. No, still early in the going here to see how both parties address this.